The dense, dark forest, its towering trees blocking out the sun, enveloped Chloe in a humid stillness. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves, punctuated by the rustling of unseen creatures, a constant feeling of being watched. She adjusted the worn backpack, the faded map weighing heavily on her shoulders. Whispers of a hidden treasure, or perhaps a passage to something stranger, clung to the forest. But now, with fishermen in Lisbon recounting voices rising from the sea, everything felt connected. Chloe didn't know exactly what she sought, only that the path to this place was marked by moss-covered stones, their carvings aligned with the nocturnal tides. As she ventured deeper, a figure emerged from the trees. It was Ivan, a man with a worn jacket and restless eyes, a seasoned observer of this area for years. He carried a notebook filled with notes on ocean currents and star patterns. "The fishermen aren't mad," he said, lowering his voice. "The sea is trying to tell us something." The voices resonate with the ancient chants recorded in the coastal temples. Chloe frowned, recalling her own research sketches. Creatures with intertwined tentacles and runes, a warning or an invitation. Night fell swiftly, and they built a meager fire. Then came the first murmur. It wasn't from the sea, but from the earth beneath their feet, a low hum vibrating through the exposed tree roots. Ivan opened his notebook, pointing to a diagram of sound waves. "It's the same frequency," he said. "Something down there, in the ocean's depths, is echoing here." A shiver ran down Chloe's spine. She'd read about geological resonances, but this felt alive, sentient. As dawn approached, they decided to head south, where Chloe's map indicated a spiral-shaped rock formation. Midway, Ivan stopped abruptly, pointing to a lichen-covered stone, a bluish-green hue. "Here," he murmured. "This is the point of convergence." Chloe touched the cool surface, noticing carvings that resembled waves and human eyes. Then, a faint light pulsed beneath her fingers, casting writhing shadows like serpents. "This isn't normal," she whispered, but Ivan had already opened a small metal box, revealing a crystal that shimmered in response to the stone. "It's a resonator," he said. "The ancients used these to communicate with underwater beings." The light intensified, and the murmurs began to form words, unknown languages mixed with the names of submerged cities. Chloe felt a pressure in her chest, as if the air was being sucked away. Ivan, however, seemed captivated. "They want us to see something," he said. "Follow the pattern of the shadows." She obeyed, noting that the projected shapes traced a path through the trees. As they walked, the ground began to tremble, and the hum transformed into a distant, almost hypnotic melody. Hours later, they reached a clearing where the ground dropped sharply into a dark abyss. Within, shimmering mercury-like water bubbled, exhaling vapors of salt and sulfur. "This isn't natural," Ivan said, testing the temperature with a thermometer. "It's cold, yet the surface boils. A contradiction, or something containing energy." Chloe approached, and her reflection in the water distorted, revealing completely black eyes. She recoiled in fright, but Ivan had already tossed the crystal into the pit. The reaction was immediate. The water illuminated in shades of violet, and shapes emerged on the surface. Creatures with long limbs and translucent fins, moving in slow motion. The murmurs now became silent screams, echoing directly into their minds. Chloe fell to her knees, clutching her head, as images flooded her consciousness. A submerged city, temples with giant aquariums, humans and sea creatures working together. Then, a burst of mental static, and everything vanished. When she regained her sight, Ivan was pale, clutching his notebook to his chest. "They exist. They aren't myths. And they've been watching us for centuries." Chloe stood trembling. What are we to them? A threat? An experiment? Ivan didn't answer. Instead, he pointed to the pit, where the water was now calm, reflecting the night sky like a perfect mirror. "We have to go back. Tell the world." But Chloe hesitated. In her pocket, she found a phosphorescent shell, identical to those the Lisbon fishermen had described as gifts from the voices. She didn't know if it was a gift or a warning. As they retraced their steps through the forest, the silence between them was heavy. Chloe pondered the journals of early explorers who mentioned pacts with sea entities to protect the coast, pacts rumored to demand sacrifices. Ivan, on the other hand, seemed obsessed with deciphering the language of the murmurs. "If we understand their rules," he said, "we can negotiate." Chloe wasn't so sure. With each step, she felt something watching them, not from the trees, but from within the earth, the sea, the air itself. At the edge of the forest, they saw distant lantern lights. A group of fishermen, led by a woman with gray hair named Mariana, approached. "We heard the cries," she said bluntly. "The sea is restless. Did you find the source?" Chloe looked at Ivan, who tucked his notebook away. "We found it. But we have no answers, only more questions." Mariana nodded, as if expecting this. "There's a man in the city. He collects strange artifacts. They say he's spoken with the voices." Chloe and Ivan followed the fisherman to Lisbon, where the scent of salt and fish permeated the narrow alleys. The man, an antique dealer named Diogo, had a loft filled with strange objects. Compasses pointing downwards, shells with embossed inscriptions, maps drawn on shark skin. "You're late," he said without looking at them. "They're getting closer. And they're not alone." Diogo showed them a corroded metal artifact with symbols identical to those in the forest. This was found on a ship that sank 100 years ago. It belonged to a cult that believed in the awakening of the depths. Chloe and Ivan spent the night in Diogo's loft, surrounded by objects that seemed to carry forgotten stories. Every moment, the silence was punctuated by distant murmurs, as if something was whispering in the walls. Diogo didn't speak much, but his hands trembled when he touched the artifacts, as if they were memories of an ancient conversation. "They're trying to communicate," he finally said. "But the language is ancient, and not everyone is prepared to understand it." The next day, Mariana led Chloe and Ivan to a small boat, where the fishermen were ready to set sail. The sea seemed calmer than before, but there was a tension in the water, as if it awaited something. "The sea has memory," Mariana said, adjusting the sails. "And now, it's reminding us." Chloe gazed at the horizon, where the sky met the ocean in a faint line. She felt as if she was about to cross a boundary she should never have crossed. As the boat moved away from the coast, the wind began to change. It wasn't the natural wind, but something older, deeper. The waves seemed to pulse in sync with Chloe's heart, and she felt watched not just by the sea, but by something that lived within it. Ivan, beside her, seemed more determined than frightened. "We're on the right path," he said, holding his notebook to his chest as if it were armor. When they reached the point where the water began to shimmer with a deep blue hue, the boat stopped. Sunlight reflected strangely on the surface, as if the sea were breathing. Chloe stepped onto the bow, feeling the weight of the world behind her. The phosphorescent shell in her pocket pulsed faintly, as if connecting to something down below. "They're waiting," she whispered, unsure if it was to herself or Ivan. Suddenly, the sea churned. An undercurrent surged, pulling the boat downwards. The water engulfed them, and for a moment, Chloe thought she was dying. But then, everything stopped. She opened her eyes and saw a submerged city, illuminated by dancing green and blue lights like dreams. Creatures with long limbs and glowing eyes floated around, their movements smooth and precise. They were beings made of the water itself, and they were waiting. Ivan, even with ragged breaths, raised his notebook and began to write. It was as if he was translating what he saw, transforming silence into words. Chloe, in turn, felt a calling. It wasn't a command, but a summons. She knew she couldn't turn back. What she had found down there wasn't just a secret, it was a choice. And she had to decide if she would be a witness or a part of it. When they finally surfaced, the sun was high, and the world seemed different. The forest, the sea, the people of Lisbon, everything felt heavier, more conscious. Chloe looked at Ivan, who seemed weary but also illuminated. "What will we do now?" she asked. He smiled, but didn't answer. Instead, he pointed towards the horizon, where the sea seemed to smile. "Wait," he said. "They are still calling."